South African Deputy President Kgalema Motlanthe presided in early May over a ceremony vesting over 100 Muslim imams with a newly assigned authority of the state. For the first time in South Africa's history, Muslim couples married by the Quran enjoy the government's full legal recognition of their unions. This change comes as an amendment to the South African government's Marriages Act of 1961, designating imams as marriage officers. The first imams to be given the power of state marriage following this change were given the same state test required of all marriage officials. At the graduation ceremony on April the 30th, 2014, Deputy President Motlanthe mentioned that many of the imams surpassed the testing requirements. The Deputy President called the graduation a happy occasion and hoped this new legal recognition of Muslim marriages will be the first step towards pushing back the frontiers of exclusion that have so long visited on the Muslim community. In the 20th year of modern democratic governance in South Africa, the Deputy President declared that these new rights and protections for Muslim South Africans is proof that the government's foundational vision of domestic unity, internal peace and constitutional brotherhood is slowly but surely being realised. The move hasn't been without its detractors, however. A group of over 200 Muslim organisations from across southern Africa, known as the Islamic Unity Convention, says the government failed to ask the opinion of the Muslim community at large before making its decision. A spokesman for the Islamic Unity Convention openly questioned the government's motives, asking why the government suddenly decided to empower imams to marry conveniently close to an election after 20 years of quiet deferral on the issue of Muslim and civil enfranchisement. The recent national election in Indonesia has set the popular Jakarta governor, Joko Widodo, to become his party's presidential candidate. Widodo's party, the Indonesian Democratic Party of Struggle, won enough support from both voters and political allies to nominate their candidate on Widodo's well-known reputation as a corruption buster. In his position as governor of Jakarta, Widodo implemented many policies, such as removing excess personnel from business tax collection for the purpose of cutting down on government corruption. In Indonesia, a majority Muslim country, government corruption is a much larger issue than the specific religious leanings of any given party. Compared to other nearby nations, Indonesia's transition from a theocratic government to a secularist democracy has been relatively peaceful. Gregory Feely, Associate Professor of Indonesian Politics at the Australian National University, told the New York Times, 60 years ago it was a part of the Islamic identity to vote for an Islamic political party. Today you can express your piety, but vote for anyone you want. The voters expressed the idea that the Islamic parties are more corrupt and less economically credible to them than the secularist parties. Corruption and scandal within certain Islamic political parties have put the Indonesian public somewhat off political Islam entirely. The more orthodox parties are also suffering from a lack of distinction in Indonesian politics, as most of the secularist parties support and uphold the same cultural values, preventing political Islam from taking the lead in moral and spiritual issues. The Islamic-based political parties are still politically viable in Indonesia, however, retaining enough seats in parliament to be a strong coalition partner for parties with a candidate. A Buddhist temple on China's eastern seaboard has formed an anti-terror squad in response to rising tensions and a string of attacks. Buddhist monks living in the 1700-year-old Lingyin temple on the tourist town of Hangzhou have assembled a defensive squad. The monks practice their faith during the day and train with local police at night. The temple's anti-terror squad consists of 20 monks and 25 security officers, all between the ages of 20 and 40 and in good health. They are training in the use of defensive gear such as shields and body armour. The monks are also being trained in the use of certain non-lethal weapons such as pepper spray and police bats. Xinhua, the Chinese government news agency, reported that the temple's master, Zhu Heng, decided to inform the squad to guard against possible violence and to protect the safety of Buddhist believers and other visitors to the temple. The decision to form a defence force at Lingying follows the March 7 knife attack at Kunming train station in southwest China, which killed 33, including 4 of the attackers, and left more than 100 injured. Chinese state news reports that this attack, as well as an attack in which a car was driven into a crowd of tourists in Tiananmen Square, are the work of militants from the Xinjiang region in the far west of China. State news also reports that the attacks are directed at security forces and government representatives, not tourist destinations or holy sites.